Hi folks, I hope you are doing well. I am Dr. Mohsen. This is another lecture about the history of English literature, literary ages. This lecture is continuation of previous lecture about the Renaissance period. So we are going to comprehend and understand about the Caroline age and war and Commonwealth. So please, if you don't subscribe my channel, do subscribe it, hit the bell. You will never miss an update. Line in that period is from 1625 to 1649. Caroline is derived from the word careless. The Latin version of Charles was the son of King Charles the First, became the next ruler. King Charles the First took several wrong decisions, led to civil war. So this time period was overlapped with English Civil War. The main reason of civil war will be elaborated in the next slide. The most famous dramatists during that period, were Ben Jonson. Ben Jonson, who popularized the comedy of humor, best known for his satirical play, Every Man in His Humor, which was published in 1598. After that, George Chapman, even George Chapman, who was a classical scholar whose work shows the influence of Stoicism. Stoicism was an ancient, philosophy, ancient Greek philosophy of thinking, based on, the virtue and the highest good. After that, we have Beaumont and Fletcher. Beaumont, who is very, famous for his collaboration with Fletcher, and John Webster, best known for his tragedy of White Devil and the Duchess of Malfi, which are often seen as masterpiece of the 17th century. The most famous poets, especially metaphysical poets during that period, were Andrew Marvell, John Donne, and George Herbert. Andrew Marvell, a colleague and friend of John Donne, whose thinking and reputation overshadowed of his poetry until the 20th century. And George Herbert, whose poetry was associated with writings of metaphysical poetry. The most famous poems of George Herbert were Dialogue Anthem, a paradox, as well as a parody. The most important and significant facts which influenced the literature of that period was the Civil War of England, as I have mentioned, between Cavaliers and Roundheads. The supporter of King were known as Cavaliers, and the opponent of King were known as Roundheads. This guy, Oliver Cromwell, who was a very important figure during that period. He was a good man from a good family, and related to important persons in the House of Commons. He was a gentleman farmer who saw land as as a means of making livelihood, not as a kind of hereditary position or a matter of social and economical or family pride. He was English, general and statesman who first was subordinated and then became as a commander-in-chief, led the armies of Parliament in England against King Charles I. He became key figure to the parliamentarian success. Oliver Cromwell was one of the main signatories on Charles I, death warrant, and after the execution of King Charles I, Cromwell led Commonwealth of England. And finally, England fell into confusion and crisis after the death of Cromwell in 1658. Dissolution of monarchy was another important fact during that period, which influenced influenced the literature of that period. You know, the Cavaliers were defeated. The king was dead and beheaded on 30th January 1649. The king's death, marked the dissolution of monarchy for the time being. Another important fact, that influenced the literature of that period, where English theater was officially closed and the English colonies were further expanded. You know, 17th and 18th century saw unprecedented expansion of English power, especially in North America, changing the landscape of the New World forever. The main literary features of the ages, the Renaissance's influence continued, and Elizabethan enthusiasm and national spirit disappeared. Literature reflected revival of moral and intellectual awakening, and literary scenario was overshadowed, by gloom and pessimism. Drama declined significantly, and three types of poetry appeared: Puritan, metaphysical, and cavalier poetry. And the state of prose, sermons, pamphlets, history, and philosophy were written in prose. I've outlined the Caroline age. Now we come to Civil War and Commonwealth of English literature. So this time period, like the previous two periods, belonged to Puritan age. So what is a Puritanism? What is Puritan age? Puritanism, they were also known as precessionists. It's a belief or behavior that based on strict moral and religious principles, especially the principles that people should avoid physical pleasure. So the 17th century was dominated by Puritanism, which is also known as the Puritan age or the age of Milton. You know, Milton was a Puritan who totally believed in the authority of Bible, and he was totally opposed to institutions like the Church of England or monarchy. So we come to Civil War of England. You know, this time period, the Civil War of England, based on Puritan age as well. The English Civil War lasted from 1642 to 1649. The followers of King were known as Cavaliers, meaning gallant gentlemen, and the opponents of King were known as Roundheads. You know, the name derived from the habits, from the men habits of crawling their head close to their face. So for the first 2 years, the king and his forces were successful, but it was in 1645 that the Roundheads choose Oliver Cromwell. You know, I've explained who was Oliver Cromwell as their general. So Cromwell turned the forces, the forces supporting the dissidents in parliament into the new model army, a very well-disciplined and efficient military organization, which believed that is supported by God, and they fought with divine help. So by 1646, the king and his forces were surrounded and encompassed, but the civil war was not over. Cromwell's supporters seized control of parliament by ousting the majority of members who wanted a monarchy limited by constitutional guarantee for the rights of people and parliament. Cromwell installed the Round Parliament, which was including 100 members who agreed with his idea of eliminating monarchy in favor of a republic. Cromwell's supporters were in minority, and they finally controlled the army, and within a few months had defeated the supporters of King. The execution of Charles I was happened, and Cromwell had Charles tried for treason. The verdict was guilty, and on January 13th, 1649, the sentence of immediate execution was handed down. So monarchy, only in this period there was no monarch in England, and English people realized that monarchy was so essential for them. Hence, Puritanism became gradually unpopular. The most important facts, writers, and poets of that period. Theater were banned during that period. Renaissance and Puritanism died out by the end of that period. The Elizabethan exuberance, romantic exuberance ended in that period. The most famous writers of that period were John Bunyan, from 1628 to 1688, was an English writer and Puritan preacher, the author of the Pilgrim's Progress, as well as Thomas Hobbes from 1588 to 1679, a writer and political philosopher and the author of Leviathan. The most famous and popular poets during that period were John Milton. I have explained who was John Milton, who was a Puritan, who believed in the authority of Bible. Is best known for his epic poem Paradise Lost, who served as a civil servant for the Commonwealth of England, as well as Jeremy Taylor from 1613 to 1667. Was a cleric in the Church of England who achieved fame as an author during the Oliver Cromwell. He is always known as Shakespeare of Divine for his poetic style of expression. Thank you for watching my video about the Caroline Age and War and Commonwealth. The New Classical period right after this lecture will be my forthcoming video. Keep loving literature and follow my channel. Thank you.